Good evening and good morning and good afternoon to everybody watching this session, Entrepreneurship on Tap of Global Entrepreneurship Week 2021. We're very glad to have Gwen Edwards, a wonderful old friend of GEW and the Global Entrepreneurship Network. Thank you so much, Gwen, for being here. And Gwen will be leading this discussion. A few words about Gwen. Well, Gwen spent many years in the tech industry, including a position as a CTO of a venture-backed company. And Gwen is highly involved with startup companies and appreciates the challenges and excitement of entrepreneurship. She participates regularly as partner, supporter, investor, and board member of young startups. And she's also a board member at Golden Seeds, an angel investment body supporting women entrepreneurs. Gwen is also an angel investor herself. And Gwen, I would appreciate if you please take the microphone. I'll turn off my video.
Okay.
And good luck to you. Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you, Ayla. Thank you so much. Let me just say for my friends at Golden Seeds, I'm actually not a board member because we don't have a board, but I love being a board member of some of our companies, and I'm very active with Golden Seeds leadership, and encourage everyone to look at what we're doing. We love supporting, working with women CEOs and founders, and any company that has a woman on the team with at least a 10% equity position. We think that should be every company. So wouldn't that be a great world? So it's really an honor and a privilege, and it's going to be a lot of fun this morning to introduce to you, excuse me, to introduce to you a CEO from Silicon Valley, Caitlyn Krebs. She is a CEO of Nalu Bio, and fascinating new company. Caitlyn has been an entrepreneur for 20 years. Well, she's been in the healthcare and life sciences industry for over 20 years. And all of that career has been in the Bay Area of San Francisco. Yet you'll find a fun fact is that there's some very interesting deep roots to Israel. And one of the things that's fun about this connection that we're making today, this evening, your time. Caitlyn just brings tremendous background in biology and chemistry, but only recently had this opportunity to fully take the helm of a company, and recently was actually 2019. So she's at that exciting knee of the curve, as we say, in her growth trajectory. I want to just add that in addition to her experiences so far with a number of companies, she is also on the board of something called the California Technology Council, which is interesting because it's all about policy and guidance to ensure that California remains a leader in innovation. And we can continue to be proud of what we can do and as partners with you and others around the world. Well, it's just exciting to be part of this journey with you, Caitlyn. And I'd like to just say that you have a great story with the history of cannabinoids. And I hope everyone is somewhat familiar with cannabinoids, because this company is really disrupting a field that is also just emerging as something legitimate. And so we'll talk more about the challenge of being a disruptor in a market that's still finding its way, and finding the right investors to partner and employees to engage when you're that much of an innovator and you're seeing just huge potential. So Caitlyn, I'd like to ask you to say a bit about your background as well, and tell us the story of Raphael.
Sure. Thank you, Gwen. I'm excited to be here this morning or this evening, depending on where you are in the world. It's been a pleasure working with you over the last maybe 18 months or 2 years that we've known each other. As you said, I come out of the biotech and life sciences industry. Nalu's my sixth startup, but as you highlighted, it's my first CEO role. So it has been quite a roller coaster ride over the last 2 years building the company. But the story really starts with my co-founder, Randall Ussery, whose father had multiple sclerosis. And he started looking for alternative pain management solutions to his MS, to his pain, and started looking at CBD, cannabidiol, and cannabinoids to solve that. And gave him CBD, every day for a period of time, and realized sometimes his pain was relieved, sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes he was very coherent, other times it wasn't. And so Randall really realized that the consistency and quality of cannabinoids was inconsistent, impure, and he really started looking for better ways to kind of bring cannabinoids to pain management. So he, at the time, was at a venture fund called Wildcat here in Silicon Valley. And he had a partner, Phyllis Whiteley, who I've known for 10 or 12 years now. And he started looking at this molecule, CBD, and realized with Phyllis that it has a huge therapeutic potential. And she started looking, she gets all excited about the biology. She comes out of big pharma and realized, wow, CBD binds to one of the most druggable targets in the body. It's called the GPCR receptor. And so we realized that CBD and other cannabinoids could have a huge therapeutic potential, not only in pain, but in other areas, inflammation, skin, immunology. And we looked at it and we decided, wow, there's a huge market. It's a very exciting molecule. Let's start a company to create pure, consistent, scalable cannabinoids. And so Phyllis called me up, and I was at a cancer genomics company at the time, a competitor to a company, Grail. Some folks may know that. So it's a simple blood test to detect cancer early on, multiple types of cancer. And she called me up and she said, Caitlyn, you know what CBD is? And I said, yes, Phyllis.
You weren't sure whether to say yes or no.
That's right. Well, Gwen, I think, as you know, I grew up in Hawaii, on the big island of Hawaii. And so cannabis and CBD is kind of, it's a known quantity in Hawaii. And so it's not novel to me. And so I started looking at this with her, and we realized that hemp synthesized or extracted CBD is very inefficient. There's another approach called biosynthesis, which is not kind of as scalable for cannabinoids. And so we realized, why wouldn't you take the aspirin approach to cannabinoids? Why wouldn't you make CBD and other cannabinoids through chemistry in the lab? It's scalable, it's repeatable, and it's cost effective. So that's the story. And Nalu is a Hawaiian word because I'm from Hawaii, and it means wave or go with the flow. So there's a connection back to Hawaii as well.
Oh, wow. I never knew that. That's great. And why don't you tell us a bit about the history behind cannabinoids in Israel?
Yes. So, oh, yeah.
No, you were mentioning Raphael Machan.
Yes. Yeah. So Raphael Mechoulam, he is known as the godfather of cannabinoids, and in particular, synthesizing through chemistry. So he's the first chemist to synthesize cannabinoids. And so that was obviously a breakthrough or a disruption in this industry. He showed that you can actually replicate cannabinoids, those that come out of the plant, and those that actually you have cannabinoids within your body, endogenous, or ones that your body makes. And he's also been able to replicate those through chemistry. So if he hadn't done it, he kind of forged the way. And he's from Israel, so University of Israel, and he's been making cannabinoids in the lab for, I want to say 20 or 30 years now. So there's obviously a big tie back to Israel.
Actually, we should have connected with him for this event. It didn't occur to me, but that could be a fun next step.
That would be a great follow-on.
Yeah, it's just fascinating when we keep discovering these small world stories, and we tip our hat all the time to Israel, because there's such innovation that we continue to discover, and here we are building on it, unbeknownst to many of us. So thank you. I'd love to also talk about the fact that, you mentioned then you started looking for investors, and you were really trying to figure out, how do you define this opportunity? And in the investment community, I think it's fair to say, there are people that are aggressively investing in the sector. There are also, somebody just made a correction.
Oh, Hebrew University. Thank you for correcting
yes.
that.
Yes, Professor Raphael is at the Hebrew University. Thank you. Yes, so I think one of the interesting challenges has been, how do people get comfortable investing in this space? And one of the challenges I know you had was helping people understand, in a way, think pharma, don't think about the cannabinoid market at large necessarily, but you in a way you had to legitimize what you're doing and then show how it can be a powerful, helpful, healthy, safe ingredient, and an ingredient not only for pain relief, but an ingredient in cosmetics and other retail applications. So I think, and let me also just come back to one of the key themes that I know is so important for all of us to appreciate, is the power of establishing milestones and achieving them or exceeding them, and how that really defines your trajectory, success, other entrepreneurs, because value and value creation is tied to milestone achievement. And so given that, I mean, the first thing you had to do was help people understand what you were doing. And that's often every entrepreneur's challenge, because it's new and different. And here you are new and different in a new and different industry. So can you say a little bit about that? And then I'll comment on how the milestone helped you, but go ahead.
Yeah, so it was a challenge starting Nalu Bio, just because we saw this huge opportunity in the retail market, as you say, in beverages and foods and supplements. Kind of CBD is everywhere. It's in your coffee shop, it's in your pet food. But then educating people that this molecule is actually a very potentially efficacious in true, diseases and chronic pain. And, how do we navigate that? And so we, in the beginning, actually, Phyllis Randall and I, is this two companies? Is this one company? Are we a retail company? Are we a pharmaceutical company? And what we came to after a lot of discussion was that the chemistry platform is really the foundation of the company. That's the innovation, that's the disruption. And then we can use it in different channels. We can use it in retail and we can use it in pharmaceuticals. But as you know, pitching that to investors and telling that story, it took us a lot to kind of navigate and kind of come up with a cohesive way of articulating the value of this platform for those two businesses.
Right. And we can talk more about that. How do you hold your own? How do you kind of listen to all the input you get from investors and others, hold your own, but maybe adapt as needed? So that's also a constant challenge. Let me just come back to the milestone point, though, because I think that helps us understand how you did build that solid platform. I mean, you built the solid science. So I know you were first pretty comfortable with being able to generate a kilogram of CBD, but or the gram level.
Yep, the grams. Yep.
And you needed to get to kilograms. And sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah, no, that's right. So, when we first started, in Silicon Valley pitching this, we had this idea. We can synthesize CBD we know it will be ultra pure, it'll be consistent, and we can do it cost effectively. And a lot of the feedback I got early days was, well, just go and do it. You know, this is paper chemistry. And so that was the pushback initially. And so an investor actually I talked to, he's like, just get in the lab, get some early dollars in, get in the lab and prove that you can do this. Yeah. As you say, milestones, like show the milestone that you can actually do this in the lab at the gram scale. And so we did that. We got a small amount of capital.
In a way, he's saying, don't waste your time trying to raise money when you don't have enough yet. So it's that pressure point in a way.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Precious thing any entrepreneur has.
You're absolutely right. And so it was great advice. And so we took it and we went into the lab and we showed that we could make CBD through chemistry at the gram scale. So kind of at the R&D scale. And then we realized, all right, the next major milestone is to show that we can do this at scale. And so that we can scale this up. And so the next major milestone for us was to put our chemistry into a contract manufacturing organization. So a large chemical company who knows how to scale these ingredients. And so that was the next biggest milestone. And, you know, we've done that, we're doing that, and we continue to scale up through contract manufacturing. But those are some of the other key milestone, Gwen, for investors was, is it the same? Is a chemistry-based cannabinoid the same as it is from the plant?
How much do we trust science?
That's right. And so our scientists were like, of course it's the same. It's the same molecule. But investors and customers want to know that it's the same thing. So that was another big milestone, comparing our CBD to plant-based CBD and to show that it's exactly the same molecule and it does the same thing.
Yeah, that's so true. And I want to finish this point, and then there are a couple of questions I'll get to for everybody who's asking them. So when you were at that point of saying, we know we can do the kilogram, the gram, we've got to get to the kilogram. And that's when you were raising that first significant round of capital, the early seed round. And, you know, I think that everybody at that level knows, okay, there's risk that this won't scale. But that's the risk they were taking. So they're betting on you and the team and the potential of the market, and realizing it could go pharma, it could go food, cosmetics. And I think the early stage investors were comfortable enough that you don't have to have that figured out. In fact, there was excitement. Maybe there are multiple exit potentials and multiple companies, but you've got to prove that you can get to that scalable level. So that I just think it's helpful for people to appreciate that having clarity around a milestone like that from an investment perspective made it then really much easier to get our arms around diligence. So we were focused on diligencing that, talking to your head of your chief science officer, and getting other people around the table that could validate that challenge and potential of achieving it. And then that was clear. We could make that bet, jump in, and then the rest has become an interesting history because you met it, and then you started exceeding it by having an order of volume, sales orders, people coming in wanting to have this chemistry. And so the question of market demand was being resolved as you were cracking the code on how to scale. And that was really, really an interesting phenomenon to see and to be part of.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you're absolutely right. It was, okay, I'm setting out these milestones, you know, we got to work towards this. Let's make it happen. But then as we started meeting our milestones, investors were really excited, right? Like, wow, okay, you said you were going to go out and do it the gram scale. You said you were going to scale it. You said you were going to show that it's exactly the same. We did all those things. And then you're right, you know, do you have customers? And so then the shift happened to, okay, let's get some interest from potential customers and really test the market. And, you know, we were super successful. You know, we had a lot of companies, different types of companies wanting our kind of ultra pure ingredients.
Yeah. And it's such a wonderful problem, a high class problem to have when you need money to help fulfill customer orders.
Yes.
That's like, oh yeah, I think maybe we can help with that. So a couple of good questions that maybe we can skip over to, because I think people are wanting to understand a little more about the science. So one of the questions is, do you isolate specific molecules from CBD oil and prove efficacy? And I know the answer is no, but do you want to address
Sure.
that, Kate? Yeah, thank you, Kate.
So we actually develop our cannabinoids through a pure chemistry process. So we take kind of two novel, low-cost chemicals, we add them together through a 4-step process, and we generate CBD. And in fact, the third step is an intermediate called olivetol, and that can be turned into CBD and some of the other, there's 140 other cannabinoids, CBG, CBN, CBC, that people might not know about. But it's really a platform in which we can generate many types of cannabinoids.
Yeah, and maybe this is a point where you could just add that you actually have a unique signature, I guess is the term, on the molecule, so that if somebody should try to mimic it, you would know whether it's yours or not.
That's right. We in our
Part
chemistry
of the
and
IP
actually
protection, which we all care
that's
about.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So in the patent application, we've included, as you say, a little signature. So something that we know is unique to our chemistry, so that if someone tries to replicate it, we can test that in the market and say, hey, you know, you're not allowed to do that. This is our, you know, patented proprietary technology. So yeah, so IP obviously coming out of the biotech and life sciences industry, you know, IP is very important to companies like Nalu, and making sure that we're protected. Right.
And yeah, and everything about the value of what you're building. There's another question from Laura asking, how does your technology differ from other companies that are synthesizing cannabinoids? And maybe you just want to reiterate what you said so that we're making sure that's clear. And then the next question is, when do you expect to be commercial ready?
Good question. So, you know, Raphael Mechoulam, you know, many years ago showed that you could synthesize cannabinoids through chemistry. There are a couple other companies who have done that since then. And what really differentiates our chemistry is the inexpensive inputs, so the starting materials, the short number of steps in our chemistry pathway. So most of our competitors are at 7 to 10 steps. We're at 4 steps. So we're much shorter, cost-effective inputs, and our yields are much higher too. Yield is the amount of CBD or other cannabinoid you get out at the end of that process. And the reason is because we have fewer steps. So as you move from kind of step 1 to step 2, step 2 to step 3, you lose yield, or you lose some of that chemical that you want out of the back end. So it's really, the secret sauce is really in the chemistry platform. That's really where what differentiates our synthetic chemistry from others.
Thank you, Caitlin. It's, we often say in any industry, cheaper, faster, better.
That's right. And more sustainable. Right.
Oh, for the planet.
More sustainable for the planet. That's the thing that I think people really don't realize is growing hemp and extracting cannabinoids out of hemp is a really inefficient process, just because the cannabinoids are in such low quantity in the plant. And so, you know, it takes 20 pounds of hemp to get to a kilo of CBD. In another process, biosynthesis, where you use organisms, you genetically modify yeast or E. coli, it's a 500-liter reactor to get to a pound of CBD. And so what they don't realize is if you're using plants to do this, it's hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, it's land, it's a significant amount of energy. And so it's really not environmentally friendly way to get to cannabinoids.
Yeah, and that's you're just reminding me that was another interesting challenge that we saw as you were looking for capital. I remember discovering somebody who has a $100 million fund just for cannabinoids, but their focus was how to replace tobacco, for example, and create jobs in another kind of agricultural product that had obvious benefits over tobacco. And so there are a lot of people in that field that very, and it's interesting. Here's a challenge when you're super disruptive and you're actually about to disrupt an industry that people are trying to raise capital for. Now, it doesn't mean that has to go away. There are lots of other uses for hemp-related products, but it is back to the disrupting the disruptor.
That's right. That's right. I thought when starting Nalu, I thought CBD was fairly widely accepted. It's not psychoactive. You don't get high from it. And, if you could create this through chemistry, it doesn't touch the plant. It doesn't have the stigma attached to it. But you're absolutely right. At least in the US, cannabinoids have only been, or CBD has only been legal since 2018. And so there's a stigma attached to it. And investors, it's a new industry and we're a disruptor in that industry. So it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah. So I just think it's helpful for people to appreciate that, there are always challenges when you're trying to innovate. And sometimes from the outside, it looks easy. Oh gosh, you just raised this huge round at a great valuation, which is very exciting. But little do they know, how many pitches did that take and how long did that take?
Right.
And I think you have some data on that, Caitlyn, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. Yeah. So we raised a seed series. I think I did about 100 pitches. Got a lot of no's, got a few key yeses, and got to my seed round. And as you know, I'm now raising a Series A. And we've got a lead investor, Bonaventure Equity, which I'm super excited about. But yeah, I've probably done 150 pitches, gotten, at least 80 no's. And we've got our lead now. And so we're circling up around, but it's a lot of no's, which I'm used to now.
Yeah. And I think it helps. I mean, I remember an entrepreneur that he was doing something called Mobi TV, which now is, mobile on your phone. It's like taken for granted, but it was so radically new. And I think he said he had 250 pitches and he had patents and PhD from MIT. He couldn't get anywhere. It was so radically new. And sometimes it just takes never giving up, but that balance of, is it still the right thing? Well, it is. So you just keep looking for that right set of investors.
A lot of persistence, Gwen.
Right. She persists. So we have a question here. Also, Elizabeth Katz, she's asking, this is a good one. Was there any concern in regards to giving the formula to an external manufacturer? So how did you protect your IP with the contract manufacturer?
Yeah, so that's something we're very aware of. And so we went to actually a very reputable contract manufacturer who Matthew Roberts, our CTO, had actually worked with before, a company called Grace Chemicals. And so we made sure that this company's business is based on, solid relationships. They need to make money through our process as well, making sure that it's a win-win for them. And, they're very aware that if they were to give away someone's IP, they wouldn't have customers themselves. So we just made sure that we went to a very reputable contract manufacturing organization.
And how far away are they from your headquarters?
They're actually in Oregon. So we're in California and they're in Oregon. So, it's about a 2-hour flight, probably a 12-hour drive.
Okay, I think maybe the message is you kept it somewhat close to home, but I'm not sure how important that is relative to the trust factor, the knowledge, the relationships, and then structuring a deal that was attractive to make it a win-win.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, I think we wanted to keep it close enough to home that we can fly up there and manage, kind of the operations and see it. But also going with someone who's really, top in their field, who's going to protect the IP just because, if we're successful, they're successful.
Yeah. There's no incentive to try to do something that isn't legal, much less ethical.
Right. That's exactly right.
So let's see. I'd love to come back to just the fact that, here you are now, and you've got more orders than you know what to do with. You see the huge opportunity. Maybe just talk a little bit about, because we love to have these fireside chats, also expose to everybody a bit more about you as a person and what you find challenging. So you're at this really exciting cusp. Can you just say a little bit about what keeps you going? What are your concerns and how do you get over that and keep going every day? And can I just add, I'm always impressed with women that are leading companies, and somehow they still manage to have a life. They have a family, they have children. And I think certainly in the early days of tech, we didn't think that was possible, but we're finding more and more it is, and it's wonderful. And you're role modeling in that way as well, Caitlyn. So congratulations.
Thanks, Gwen. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to juggle. But I think every day I wake up, and if we can deliver a product that could reduce opioids, this is the big vision long term. If we can reduce opioids, that to me is really meaningful in my career. So if I can say I build a company that has developed basically new drugs to replace opioids with something that's safer, non-addictive, that to me is the big picture. And that's what gets me up every day. You're right. When I'm slogging away and due diligence questions from investors and financial models at 2 in the morning. Yeah, it's challenging, but I think the end goal is really exciting for me. And I just love building businesses too. I think most of the companies I've been at have always been kind of on the cutting edge of science and technology. I was at a pre-diabetes company before people thought you could prevent diabetes. I was at an Alzheimer's company before people thought you could change the trajectory of Alzheimer's. I was at a cancer company where we believe you could detect cancer early through a simple blood test. So I really believe CBD and cannabinoids are kind of the next frontier for me. So that's what gets me up every day.
That's wonderful.
And my little boys at 5 a.m.
Yeah, it keeps you grounded. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, I've 2 little boys, so they're a ton of energy, a ton of fun, and they do bring me back to what's important in life as well.
And I think you're pointing to something we hear over and over, and it's a reminder, especially to people starting out on their entrepreneurial journey, that you want to make sure what you're committing to is something you're deeply passionate about, because at the end of the day, it's not going to be some intellectual goal or the opportunity to make a ton of money. There are lots of ways to do that, but it's about connecting to that passion, because that's what will propel you. And we all kind of know that, when we've been in your shoes and we work with entrepreneurs, and the ones that don't have that core passion are more comfortable to say, you know what, this isn't quite working out the way I thought it was. I think I'll go do something else. And that can happen. But the entrepreneurs that are compelled by something deeper, whether it's like Randall, your co-founder, and his personal commitment to his father, and he watched him suffer and he watched how this could be helpful, that's a motivator. And you finding that you're going to make a difference in so many people's lives is a huge motivator. And there's nothing like that to pump extra adrenaline when you need it. Which
That's right.
and actually, maybe that goes to a question here I see on the chat, which is somebody's remarking, wow, 150 pitches. How much time have you allocated to running the company versus fundraising?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think it was 150 companies that I reached out to. I think I pitched maybe to 50 or 60 of those. But it's a great question. I wish I spent less time fundraising and more time operating. But as you say, being a disruptor in a new kind of disruptive category, it's a lot of education and it's a lot of cycles, and it's really building a relationship with the investor. I think that's one of the things I've learned along the way is a lot of the folks who are investing in this Series A, I've known them since I was raising the seed, and they've watched me hit those milestones, and they realize, oh, she's doing it. She can do it. She's proving, that she can do what she said she's going to do.
Exactly. And maybe I'll just make 2 comments on that. One is a personal experience where before I stepped into a CEO role with venture backing, I was told by someone, are you sure you're ready to spend the first 12 hours of your day running the company and the second 12 hours of your day raising money? And I thought to myself, they're kidding. They don't really understand that I'm used to working 18 hours a day, but I came from a big corporate environment. I thought they just don't get it. Well, I didn't get it. It really was that balance. And I think it's something, honestly, that as an industry, we appreciate isn't quite right. We wish that there were more streamlined ways for entrepreneurs to get access to capital when they need it, but collectively we aren't quite there. And I just think it's so important for people to appreciate that. And it is about, I think, building trust and building relationships, because from an investor perspective, all they're really able to, I'll use the word control, is they're investing in the person and that team. Everything else is going to change. We don't know exactly how or when. There will be a pivot somewhere. And even in your case, will you be a pharma company mostly or ingredients? We don't know. Will there, what else might happen? So, but what we do know is the team. And as people get to know every team and team leaders, how perseverant are they? How much do they persevere? How much can you trust that person and work with them? And I think that's why it really is. It's funny. It's very much a relationship business. That even from an investment perspective, it's not a transaction. It's a relationship, and you really are working together. So it's neat to see also people that we're looking at this round and saying, wow, please keep in touch with me. And that's giving you an opportunity to build more relationships for the next round, where you can decide, do I want that, or do I want to have my growth come from the margin from revenue, which is a fabulous way to grow a company when you have that option, or some blend. So that's really also just I think an important point that is so wonderful that you can illustrate that, Caitlin. I want to just
Thank you.
Looking at one
Yeah.
other question here. Does your platform?
Oh, commercialization. It
Yes,
looks like
when?
Laura's
Yes,
asking.
that's-
Yes. So Q1 of next year. So we're ramping up. So we've got a bunch of kind of letters of intent to purchase our CBD. And so beginning of next year will be commercial. So stay tuned, Laura.
2022,
2022.
which it's amazing.
It's
around
very
the corner.
close. Yeah, it's very close.
And someone is asking also, does your platform fit just to cannabinoids?
That's an interesting question. So it's focused on cannabinoids. As I mentioned, the intermediate, so getting to step 3 is olivetol. So I would say anything that could be made off of a scaffold like that, but it's primarily focused on cannabinoids.
Okay. And I think that kind of blends with the just their molecules is interested in.
So we're starting, yeah, we're starting with
140 different CBDs. So that's a boatload of variants.
It is, in fact, you know, in addition, so we started with CBD because there's a market for it. People are buying it. People pay for it. They want it. That's why we started with CBD. There are 140 other cannabinoids. CBN for sleep is gaining traction. CBG for inflammation in the consumer side are gaining traction. But our platform, what we're going to do is we're going to take those molecules and change them. We're actually going to change the chemistry to create what we call derivatives, or basically new drugs. And those are the ones that we'll use to address the opioid crisis and kind of replacement of opioids. So not only can we do the known cannabinoids, but we can create new and better molecules that bind better in your body, that have better bioavailability, which means absorption. And so it's a pretty extensive set of molecules that we can develop from the platform.
Yeah. And we won't have to use water to do it. Those of us living in drought conditions, which is something else we share between California and Israel, learning to maximize our resources.
That's right. It's, you know, chemistry is 700 times less water use than hemp or plants. I mean, it's really significant. And in fact, I don't know if you've seen
per gram
per kilogram.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You were about to say, Caitlin?
I was about to say in California, there's been some recent news that some of the people who are growing hemp or cannabis are kind of stealing water. They're diverting water to grow their plants. So it's that dire in California that people need water to produce these plants.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I know it's almost at the hour. We have 15 minutes. I'd love to just see if there are any more questions. Make this as interactive as possible. I don't see it. Oops, sorry. I don't see any in the chat. I think maybe we've answered everyone's questions or frightened them thinking about the number of pitches.
That's all right.
It's yeah, I think you can look at what you're doing and think, oh my gosh, it's exhausting, but it's also exhilarating and
it
really
is. I mean,
exciting.
I love telling the story. I love talking to investors. It's fun, right? If you're really passionate about something, you know, kind of telling that story and why, it gets me invigorated every time I do it.
You know, somebody once said to me with respect to sales, and it's the same thing, you're selling the opportunity with your company. They said, think of presenting what you have as a gift. So it's like you're knocking on people's doors, making them aware of something that you think they'll really be delighted to know about. And then it's not onerous, it's more just something that can be pleasant.
I agree. One of the favorite kind of facts I love to share with people is that they have an endocannabinoid system, which a lot of people don't know. So you know that you have an immune system. Most people usually are familiar with, their immune system, their B cells, their T cells, but they don't realize that you actually have an endocannabinoid system. You have a whole system in your body that is in place to kind of receive and monitor cannabinoids, endogenous cannabinoids, but phytocannabinoids as well.
Wow. I was about to say, maybe you should tell us how to stimulate our own endocannabinoid system. That could be your parting gift.
Yeah, take some
pain-free and happy.
Take some CBD, take some cannabinoids. Yeah, I mean, CBD and CBN right now for sleep is kind of one of my favorite combinations.
Okay. Oh, we do have a couple other good questions. And I think it'd be, useful here. Somebody said, sorry to be blunt. We don't mind blunt. I find it hard to believe that a library of cannabinoid derivatives is new. Can you please comment?
Sure. So, there are folks who are making cannabinoid derivatives, so it's not new. Again, what's novel about our approach is it's shorter and different, and we're focused on pain. So, we believe with our team, with folks, our chief medical officer has developed over 30 drugs. Phyllis, my co-founder, comes out of Big Pharma. Our CTO is very talented in scaling up novel compounds. So, we believe there's more room in the market for better pain therapeutics. And so that's why we're doing it. So we're not the only ones doing this.
Yeah, maybe back to the fact that you have a 4-step process versus 7. And the core element, what you begin with, is so inexpensive. So I don't know if an analogy is developing software. Lots of people are developing software, and there's lots of code, and people use derivatives of code, open source, etc. But how you come up with your novel approaches, I don't know if that's a good analogy, but I hope so. Certainly there's lots going on in AI that's like that, where people are building on other root developments, just finding ways to innovate. So thank you for that question. And then Ayla asked, we talked about fundable milestones, bringing us back to our core theme here today.
Yeah.
One being proof in the lab that was so powerful, then orders from customers. She asked if we could share the following fundamental milestones with us. Maybe you mean, Ayla, I think you mean, are there more milestones? And yeah, Caitlyn, I've talked about that. Do you want to say a little bit about that, Caitlyn? I mean, you've got your,
so
you even have a roadmap chart, but we don't need to go into that much detail, but.
Sure. So next milestones for us is continuing to scale the chemistry. So, as we get to from kilos to hundreds of kilos to tons of CBD, those are big milestones for us. But on the drug development side, creating derivatives, so again, kind of new chemical entities, new drugs, and putting them into preclinical models, basically cells and animals. So putting them into cells will be a big milestone. Putting them to animal pain models will be another milestone. And revenues, right? So revenues for a company. So meeting our revenue expectations, scaling the chemistry, and creating drugs, new chemical entities. Those are big milestones for us in 2022.
And maybe it's fair to say, that the clinical proof for drugs is also in parallel to the milestones that can still generate revenue outside of
That's right.
the discovery process. So kind of thinking back to what's powerful from an entrepreneurial perspective when you think about building a company that has a platform and you can go in multiple directions from that platform. So while working on the milestones on the drug side, there could still be progress in revenue growth on the consumer side and retail side.
That's exactly right.
So they're not.
Yeah, we almost have two sets of milestones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're not serially dependent. Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, I think, let's see if there's one more question. I don't see anything else. Oh, here's an interesting question, which might lead you to a trip to Israel. How about opening the product to research and at what stage?
Great question. So we would love to provide our CBD for research. So we've thought about creating kind of an open innovation program at Nalu where you could submit, here's your research project or study you'd like CBD, and we could send amounts to the researcher. We love people to use this in multiple therapeutic areas, to publish on it. So that's, as a startup, we haven't done that yet, but we are definitely, that's in our roadmap as well, is opening it up to researchers to use the compounds. And hopefully maybe a collaboration, with Israel or kind of the MENA region as well.
Yeah, that's exciting. I hadn't thought about that. It's very exciting. So that's a great note to end on, I think. We've gone way past our time, but I hope this has been informative, and appreciate everybody's questions and engagement. That's what this is about, is really having an opportunity to highlight some of the innovative things that are occurring and build connections with our friends halfway around the world. So let me see if, Ayla, do you want to say anything by closing?
Well, if you want to answer the last question we have here from Dov Kalman. Can you see the question?
Sorry, I now see it. I'm sorry, Dov. Yes, are you thinking of testing a combination of THC CBD to help patients get a pure and consistent product?
So we actually in our chemistry platform have 0% THC. So we say no THC, never had it, never will. That's actually really one of the value propositions for a lot of our customers on the retail side of the business. Mm-hmm. On the therapeutic side of the business, though, there is data to show that a combination of THC and CBD is helpful for pain. That's a lot of where the current research lies. Whether we'll put THC in our products, that's a whole nother kind of regulatory question and scheduled question. So we don't have any plans to look at ratios of THC and CBD, but as you said, Gwen, as we evaluate the drug development business, we'll have to see if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, that's a question that raises that original concern, and how do you navigate and walk that line? And, but yeah, appreciate the question and the answer. Thank you, Caitlyn.
Thank you both. Thank you so much for this wonderful, informative, and exciting interview. And good luck to Nalu Bio. And thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Gwen.
It's been enjoyable.
Thank you so much. And thank you for looking at tech as even from a bigger perspective, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's very exciting.